Hey everyone, this is Isaac
And this is Jackie.
from Nonessential Media, and you are listening to the Beach City CROWS podcast. This podcast is all about our favorite cartoons, mine being Steven Universe.
And mine being Haikyuu.
Just a warning, this episode will feature spoilers for Steven Universe, Season 2 through Episode 16.
And spoilers for Haikyuu through Season 2, Episode 8.
Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy. Welcome back, everyone, to the Beach City CROWS podcast. I am Isaac, and I will be watching Haikyuu, and with me today is...
My name is Jackie, and I am watching Steven Universe.
And yeah, let's just get right into it. What did you want to start with first?
Why don't you tell me? You want to start with Steven Universe?
Yeah.
Let's start with Steven
I don't know
Universe.
why I ask.
I don't know.
We do this every episode.
Every episode we start with Steven Universe. Okay, so I want to start by saying that this batch of Steven Universe episodes were really good.
That's good to hear.
Because there wasn't a bunch of filler. There was still one episode that I would hope to never see again in my life. It was a Ronaldo episode.
Oh,
so
yeah.
No surprise. But the rest of it felt very relevant. It felt like it was actually diving into these characters a little bit more, peeling back the layers, developing them a little bit more. Nothing about it felt super fillerish. So I want to start by saying that. And then, again, like I said last episode, these episode numbers are a little bit off because, well, we don't actually know what episodes are in Season 2. Nobody does. We checked like 3 or 4 different sources, and they had 3 or 4 different answers, so we're just going off this list. So the first episode I watched was Sworn to the Sword, which was a really good episode. Connie wants to protect Steven. So cute. And she like, I guess like these birds or whatever it was like seagulls, like vicious seagulls show up, and she's like, pa 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 pa, and like, Sword fights him off, and Steven's like, oh my god, and she's like, yeah, I would love to learn to be a sword fighter, and he's like, no way. So he takes Connie to Pearl, and Connie gives her a little spiel about how much she wants to protect Steven, and Pearl is just like floored by this. She's like, oh my gosh, you are me. I must do whatever I can to teach you how to be a sword fighter, which is exactly what happens. And Steven at first is kind of not really about this. He's sort of like, no, like I don't want you to. And which is, I mean, it makes sense. And we were talking about this before we recorded. I was like, are Steven and Connie like, am I reading too much into it, or are they, like, moving to become a couple? And I don't believe they ever actually officially become a couple, but there's definitely, like, the shipping elements are there, guys. The ship can sail. Ship it. And, of course, it's interesting because Pearl is so excited about this, and at first I didn't quite understand why, but then she starts singing the song, which is one thing, too, is these episodes had a lot more songs in it, and I feel like Steven Universe... Normally that would annoy me, although I do like musicals, but it works so well for Steven Universe, and a lot of that is the songwriting itself.
I feel like that's its sweet spot.
If
anything, it's the music and the backgrounds and the feeling you get from the music.
Absolutely. So, the big takeaway from this was Pearl's... has like an obsessive love with Rose. She's even singing the song, and she's singing it to Connie about how, you know, Connie needs to learn to sword fight to protect her, and then she kind of is like, well, I mean him, you know, and it's like, okay, so Pearl is using Connie as a way to protect Rose, really is what it's about. But it's almost unhealthy, and Steven's the one who really brings this up, like, no, she shouldn't have to sacrifice for me, we should work together to achieve these things. That's a very healthy outlook to have if you're going to be in a relationship, while Pearl's outlook is like servitude. And it's not really a healthy... My takeaway was that, obviously, guys, this is early in the show, but Pearl and Rose's relationship was not healthy. It was very toxic.
Yeah.
So, that was... Which I know, like, now, I think this is also the first time, I could be wrong, but I think this is the first time that that they're obvious about the fact that Pearl's feelings towards Rose are so much deeper and lean a lot more towards love compared to so far the other gems. It seems more of like a lot of respect, but Pearl's is definitely a much deeper feeling towards Rose.
Makes you wonder.
It makes you wonder, definitely. But fun episode. I mean, I like that it dove into Pearl a lot more, so that was really nice. My feelings about Pearl have changed a lot compared to the first episode. Connie continues to be kind of a badass, actually.
Yeah.
Connie's pretty cool. Just gonna throw it out there.
She's just a badass, that's
She's a badass. and continuing to build, healthy relationships with Steven and Connie. And I think it's great that Pearl took kind of an interest in this. It's just unfortunate that when the door was opened, it turns out that it was an unhealthy interest.
Yeah. It's like it's almost there, and then it's like just tainted.
Yeah, there's a lot of tainting of Pearl. God, kill me in these episodes. Which the next episode was Rising Tide, and it was a Ronaldo episode, and it was dumb, and we're not going to talk about it.
Perfect. I'm happy with that.
All I'm going to say is that if you don't know what episode it is, if you haven't rewatched Steven Universe in a long time, Ronaldo does like a little Keep Beach City Weird Productions video, finding out that, oh no, the crystal gems are what's causing the weird things for Beach City. It's dumb. I don't know if there was a purpose to it or not.
I mean, that's pretty obvious, kind of, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're alien gems, of course.
Of course bad things happen around alien gems. So we're going to continue on then. I feel like I'm talking way too fast for these episodes. Keeping It Together. This was a really kind of a dark episode. So very first thing that I noticed about this episode is that I don't know if they had actually gone in depth about this previously. I don't remember, so it must not have, if they did, it must have just whoosh over my head. The gems are essentially planet killers.
Yeah.
Like, the gems are not good. We've established, now, obviously we have the 3 that are on Earth that we have spent a whole season learning about, and hopefully if you're still watching the show, then you're watching it because you're interested in them and you don't want to see them as bad guys. But they also rebelled against the homeworld and against the gems. So you kind of are starting to see a little bit of good versus evil coming up here, like they're the rebel fighters in a way.
Finally.
That's all the show's been, is good versus evil. What are you talking about? Finally for you, because that's the kind of storytelling you like. It's good versus evil.
Love it.
This episode, though, I don't remember where they went. I mean, I was just asking this is right before we recorded. I was like, where did they go? Because I couldn't remember. I watched these episodes like 6 or 7 days ago, so it's been a while. No, 6 days ago. This place, it's forced fusion, which is the first time we've heard about forced fusion. I didn't know that was possible. And with fusion having so many different, at this point in the show, there's a lot of questions around fusion as a viewer. And fusion can represent so many different things so far, metaphorically speaking, that the forced fusion thing is kind of a little disgusting. And it's that's the dark part. That's the dark evil part. But the forced fusion isn't, what makes it even worse is that it's from crystal gems that have been buried there during the war. So it's like hands and feet that are merged together.
Oh, yeah, like bodies that weren't cleaned up.
Yeah, it's like a bunch of limbs. And they form together and they form a Voltron of gems.
Voltron force fusion.
Of limbs. And the huge thing with this episode is, number one, is it shows that the gems are not, they're not a good force at all. They're very evil. The color palette for this episode, too, was lots of darker colors, like purples and grays and stuff like that, blues, like kind of that somber, solemn atmosphere was created, which was really cool. And Garnet showed fear for the first time. Garnet so far hasn't really been super expressive in terms of the entire emotional spectrum, but she's terrified to the point where she's almost immobile over the side of forced fusion. Which I think it means even more to her because she is a fusion. Like, it's literally who she is. Mm-hmm. She can't escape the fact that she's a fusion. And fusion means so much to her because that is how she's created and who she is, that I think seeing forced fusion, it's such a perversion of who she is, that it's very unsettling. It's something that you can tell it, like, if she had a stomach, she'd be throwing up. Yeah. Like, it's not good. Just not good at all. Yeah, so I think it's another huge episode. Both Sworn to the Sword and Keeping It Together. Huge for Sworn to the Sword, huge for Pearl. Keeping It Together is big for Garnet's progression and, like, digging a little deeper into her. And also, both of them added a little bit more to the plot so far. Fusion is brought up again in the very next episode. We Need to Talk is the name of the episode, and as soon as I saw the episode title, as soon as I saw the episode title, I was like, oh, it's going to be the talk. Like, the talk that Greg's going to have the talk with Steven. Which I was correct, because Connie and Steven fused in front of Greg. Greg is like, whoa, guys, what are you doing?
You do his voice perfectly.
So Greg sits down, and this is another backstory episode for Greg and Rose. this is huge because it shows an interesting side to Pearl that she's very petty. Because in this flashback, Greg is they're playing in a band, they're playing some music, great music again. Can't say enough about that. So I was happy to have more songs. But then Pearl sees this and gets a little jealous that Greg and Rose are starting to have the chemistry necessary for love. And Pearl decides to go and dance with Rose and then fuse. And for Greg, he's like, oh my god. So Greg really wants to fuse with Pearl now. And that's when, for me, this was the episode where I was like, okay, fusion has had a lot of different metaphorical meanings. This, to me, is the one that closest, this episode to me is the one that made it feel like it resembled sex more than it had in the past. Before it was like, oh, a fusing of like, you know, like when, no, like when you build Legos together, it creates something new. But now it's like, okay.
There's like a deeper, weird meaning.
Yeah, but obviously, like it feels like it can't just be physical. Like there has to be another connection to it. But then there's forced fusion, so, which is, never mind. So that was huge about this episode was that, number one, it gave more backstory Greg and Rose's relationship, and it's actually kind of a very sweet relationship, and you kind of ship them a little bit. Like, you're starting to see, like, oh my gosh, like, Greg was a really sweet guy. He's a bumbling idiot, but he's just got Rose's best intentions at heart, and Pearl does not have Rose's best intentions at heart. She has her own intentions at heart. That was the feeling I got. Like, Pearl... Like, if Pearl really had a healthy relationship with Rose, then she would be encouraging Rose to go after what she wanted. And maybe what she wanted was Greg. Maybe it was both of them. I don't know, but the feeling is that it's a very unhealthy, toxic, lots of jealousy, lots of pettiness.
But Pearl wants Rose.
Yeah, it's unhealthy but it's not like a healthy love. Because you can want somebody and love somebody, but still have a healthy understanding of that relationship.
She's like weirdly too obsessive / possessive. Even though Rose is like basically the leader and tells her what to do, you know? But it's like she can't grasp that in her head that Rose wants someone else.
Yeah, it's like she can't handle the rejection. More or less. Now, I don't understand, because they haven't really dived into this yet, although I know you've talked about it off podcast, that gems are created for certain roles. I'm guessing a Pearl is like a servant type role. Like, pearls are made to be servants. And that's really kind of the unfortunate thing, because it's almost like she's programmed to be Rose's servant, but then there's this other part of her that has, like, developed feelings and emotions that she's okay being the servant, but she wants something a little more than that.
No matter how hard she tries to get away from her servitude, she will never get rid of it. Yeah. It's always a part of her, which is sad.
It is, but I think it's interesting because there's some people that are hardwired that way in their own brain, you know? Yeah. So even though it's something that people can take from in real life as well.
It's an interesting character archetype.
It is, because I wouldn't have guessed that when she was first introduced. I would have assumed she was a little more independent in a way. If she had a servitude aspect, it wasn't wanting to be a servant as much as wanting to be motherly and being more of an enabler rather than a servant. I know that's kind of a weird thing to say, but...
no, it makes sense, though.
I'm glad it does. So that was... Yeah, that was my original impression of her, and then just in these past couple episodes, they have completely torn that down. Like, they did it so fast, like, you have to realize that, not counting the Ronaldo episode, this is only 33 minutes of animation, and my view of Pearl has done a complete 180, which is interesting. I'm glad they did that. And now I'm starting to see why people find Pearl to be a much more interesting character. I'm not saying that it's healthy. I'm not saying that her obsession with Rose and her love with Rose, put air quotes around love, is healthy, or her servitude to Rose is healthy, but she now feels more flawed and more relatable compared to before, where it was like, you're just obnoxious, go away, stop being a helicopter mom. So Greg too, like, to me this episode was really, my respect for Greg went up, because he, you know, Connie's like, oh my gosh, like, I can't talk to my mom about this is crazy, and Greg's like, I can be that adult for you. And that was Greg stepping up for the first time. Really. I mean, he's done a lot of things where he quote-unquote stepped up, but that was something that a big brother could have done, or an older friend. This was Greg as a parent willing to step up and help Connie, which is awesome because Connie obviously doesn't have that kind of relationship with her parents. And Greg's willing to be that person. And I know, as someone, to take it back to my own life, that's how my dad was not a Greg, but personality-wise, but my dad was that type of person for a lot of other kids who couldn't go to their parents about things. They went to my dad, and it makes a huge difference. So for me, like, my respect level for Greg, way up. And my interest level for Pearl, way up.
A parent that listens and invites conversation.
He's just, I really am kind of curious why Greg ended up the way he did.
Yeah, because he wasn't, like, bad.
Well, he's still not bad. Like, he's not bad, evil.
But he's just, like, I don't know if he's selfish or he just genuinely doesn't know how to parent.
Yeah, he's definitely has, like, a, like, rock and roll, free spirit, hippie type vibe going on.
Which is where I get that vibe, like, he just doesn't know.
Yeah, exactly. Like, well, to him, maybe he never had good parents himself, or maybe he had parents that were like Connie's parents, so he went the complete opposite direction, which doesn't work. You know, there has to be a balance between that strict parent and that too loose parent. But it's also true, too, that Steven's situation is so, like, freaking vastly different than anything anyone in the world is actually going to go through. Like, there's no way that anyone listening to this podcast could relate to Steven, because none of us have to go save the universe. Like, that's just not real. But because you start to break apart these characters, you start to, like, try to fit them into real life molds, and that's just not possible, I think, with Greg.
I think this is, like, the third time we've mentioned Greg and his interaction between everyone, because it's just so hard to comprehend why he is the way he is.
Yeah.
It's just like, why?
And I don't know if I hope it gets explained at some point, but so far it hasn't. So I'm looking forward to it being explained at some point, hopefully. The next one, I wrote Chili Tide. I don't think it's actually called Chili Tide. But now I want a bowl of chili. So this one, it starts off with them looking for the lapis jasper fusion, which is called malachite, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So looking for malachite. It's actually there was actually a really funny scene where they're like, we're not tired, we don't need sleep. And then it showed, like, they're the one thing I love about Steven Universe is the expressions are off the wall hilarious a lot of times. This was one of those moments where it just kind of made me laugh. So Garnet decides that she's going to keep going because she's not tired, of course. So Steven's going to have a sleepover with the other gems, or a slumber party. Sleepover, they already stay in the same house. And they don't have to sleep, so they don't know how. Well, Steven falls asleep and he dreams. And the dream was really weird. Like, this is, like, one of the things Steven Universe does so well, is it throws in weirdness, but it's, like, cool. Like, a cool weirdness. So he has a dream, and it's black and white, and it's, like, a 1950s sitcom.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And it was just, it was so well done. Even, like, I can't remember who it was, someone walked upstairs, and they just kind of kept walking even after the stairs ended into the darkness. And it was so trippy. It was like, man, when I have dreams, they're very real dreams. I don't dream of people walking off into darkness. Like, that's not a thing. So, drugs were involved. But then there's a knock at the door, and Steven answers it, and Lapis is there, and Lapis is in color. So it's the only thing in color in this black and white 1950s sitcom dream. And water is pouring out of her eyes and her mouth.
Oh, yeah, that's creepy.
That was creepy. That was, like, amazing, though. Yeah. Like, I thought that was really cool. And I guess this is, and Steven's kind of like, Lapis is communicating with me, guys. And, Pearl's like, this is dumb, whatever. Pearl actually falls asleep, and this was more in-depth than Pearl again, even though it was such a brief moment. She falls asleep, and she actually projects dreams from her Pearl. So she actually projects her dream, and she's dreaming that she's with Rose, and she's like, oh, Rose, ah. And then Rose turns around, and her face is Greg's face.
Oh, my God. The ultimate nightmare.
The ultimate nightmare fuel. And she wakes up and she's like, well, dreams aren't real. Ah! And you can tell it's, like, shaking her to the core.
She's, like, PTSD.
They didn't actually solve anything this episode, now that I think about it. They never actually found Lapis.
I think it just showed that he can contact her.
Yeah, she can contact him. Yeah, and that was kind of my main takeaway from it. I think that their connection is really interesting, which I'm sure we're going to see a lot more of that as the show goes on, their connection.
Yeah, it's interesting, though, because, like, I mean, obviously, Steven's connected to the crystal gems because he lives with them and does everything with them, but, like, not in a dream sense.
Yeah, he doesn't sit there and, like, have a connection with Amethyst in a dream. Like, that's just not a deal. But, like, he can actually really kind of communicate with Lapis in this.
Yeah, she's, like, I don't know if it's how powerful she is, but, like, she can contact him. That's crazy.
Yeah, she is super powerful. I know. It's hard to put that into. I need like a power level chart. If anyone wants to put together a power level chart, put that together for me so I can reference it when I'm both watching the show and talking about it, because I forget, because Lapis, the character design for Lapis isn't something that invokes strength.
It's very soft.
It is, and beaten. And I think we've talked about this a couple episodes ago, that to me she's almost the embodiment of trauma. And that's what, when I see her, that's what I think, and for her to be as powerful as she is a little opposite of what I would expect looking at her. And in her actions, too, until she starts doing stuff like removes the whole ocean to create a waterfall tower. Yeah, I think that's all I had for Coldy Tired. Another Pearl episode. Wow, this was a Pearl, like, jam going on. Wow, I hate myself for saying that, too.
You know what? I think they advertised this. This was like, I think this was the first, third, or second Steven Bomb, but they titled it like Sardonyx, which is their fusion, right?
I don't remember the name of their fusion.
I think it is.
I don't remember names very well, so
they called it like the week of, I don't know. I know she was like advertised when it was airing.
That makes sense, because this is the Pearl
X Garnet.
Yeah. Yeah. The Pearl Garnet fanfic week. This one's called Cry for Help, and this starts off with Steven and Amethyst watching TV, because that's all they do. Peridot comes onto the screen and is transmitting somewhere. She's transmitting from a tower that they've already destroyed. So they get their butts down there, and Amethyst is like, come on, Garnet, let's fuse. Garnet and Pearl kind of come to the conclusion that maybe something a little less chaotic than Garnet and Amethyst would be better. And so Pearl and Garnet fuse. It was interesting. This actually added a layer to Amethyst, too. Amethyst has such an interesting relationship with Garnet and Pearl, and they're complete opposite. She, despite however many times that they go through that same arc over and over again between her and Pearl, she does not like Pearl. She sees Pearl as she's just a negative in her life. She sees her as, she's almost like insecure about Pearl. She hates that Pearl does everything quote unquote better than she does, and she can't get over that insecurity and that feeling. But then with Garnet, it's like the opposite. She wants to be with Garnet. Like, she wants Garnet's respect and Garnet's love. And when I say with, I don't necessarily mean in a romantic way, but I mean, she wants Garnet's love and respect, and really, like, looks up to Garnet much more than she looks up to Pearl, because Pearl is the one that she's constantly compared to. She doesn't want to be compared to Pearl. And in this moment, she goes back to that comparison in her head, I think, a little bit. And feels like Garnet has won this time. Or not Garnet, excuse me. She feels that Pearl has won this time in the quest for Garnet. And there was another great song there, which just conveyed all of the feelings that Amethyst was going through very well. And, of course, Steven kind of notices that she's feeling this way. Because I think Steven and Amethyst have a very deep friendship. Which this is the first time we've seen Pearl and Garnet fuse. I don't really know how I feel about that fusion.
She does everything in a third person.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
And she's very, like, theatrical.
Yes, definitely.
If you're in a theater, I feel like you'd kind of like her. Or
I was a drama kid, but I didn't necessarily like her.
Like, I hate her. She's my least favorite.
She's my least favorite. Too relatable. No, yeah, but she is definitely, her weapon is like a hammer you'd see out of a video game.
Yeah, I thought that was one of the coolest fusion weapons.
No, I really liked the hammer. I thought was really cool. But no matter how many times they destroy this tower, it keeps coming back. So Steven, wanting to help Amethyst, decides they will go down to the tower, and they'll just stop Peridot from fixing the tower. Well, then they get there, and Peridot is not the one fixing the tower. It's Pearl. So then, of course, the tower gets fixed, and the next day Pearl's like, oh my god, Garnet, we have to go destroy the tower again.
No.
Yeah, they do. And they get there, and right as they're about to fuse, Steven's like, hold up, I gotta tell you guys, Pearl's the one that's been fixing the tower. And when we talk about, like, what fusion is and what it means, and how, for someone like Garnet, it's a very deep, it means so much to her. I mean, she's a fusion made out of love, like a very deep love, soulmate type love.
Yeah.
And for Pearl to manipulate her into fusion is so, it's inexcusable.
It's sort of like when Amethyst shapeshifted into Rose.
It's the same level that makes of like hatred is rising within me. Yes, you're correct.
Oh my God.
It's the same level of what is wrong with you. You're supposed to be a grown up. Like, get your crap together. And I think it's interesting because like what is Pearl trying to gain fusing with Garnet? Why is she forcing this? What does fusion mean to Pearl? Because we've seen Pearl, all we've seen from fusion from Pearl from the last couple of was with Rose. It also has this like a servitude feeling to it, but also a romantic connotation is kind of attached to it. So servitude, romance, love, all these different things, and then she's manipulating Garnet into that. Super problematic. That's all I'm going to say.
What's even more problematic about it is I think the main thing she gets out of fusing with Garnet is because it's fun. It's like her most fun she's ever had. It's really amazing for her to do it, you know?
That's awful.
Yeah, it's like her creepy, manipulative entertainment.
When you consider what fusion is for Garnet, like it is a level of betrayal that is hard to put into words. That was really kind of pissed me off a little bit, actually. Yeah. And so all this building up for Pearl and me starting to kind of understand her more, now it's like, but why? Why?
And you feel so bad for Garnet, because it's like, why are you putting her through this?
Yeah, it clearly, like, destroyed her, and proof of that is the next episode, Keystone Motel, where the tension between Pearl and Garnet is so thick that they're not talking, and Pearl is apologetic. No one cares, Pearl. Like, get out of here. You manipulated her and betrayed her. And Garnet, of course, is just so angry about it, understandably. And so Greg and Steven have to go out of town, so Garnet goes with them to get away from that toxic atmosphere in the household. And while they're in the motel, she unfuses because Ruby and Sapphire can't deal with this trauma. I mean, this is true trauma, and it's so much that it broke them apart and unfused them.
Because it's not just Garnet fusing with Pearl, it's Ruby and Sapphire.
Yeah, being forced to fuse with Pearl. Like, being manipulated into fusion. That's awful.
That's dark.
It's really dark. It's really messed up. So then they both are handling it their different ways, but for both of them, it's destructive, the way they handle it. And I think it goes to show you how much, like, something that to Pearl seemed so innocent, and she didn't really understand, it seemed like, why it was wrong. How something like that can utterly destroy a person. It utterly destroyed Garnet. Literally destroyed Garnet back into her two separate, gems. I think it was almost their way of... It was a very deep episode in that it dealt with... It truly, like, took on the idea of trauma and how people deal with it. Everything was fine at the end of the day, though, because it's Steven Universe and everything. Because it's Saturday morning. It's a Saturday morning cartoon, and you only have to say I'm sorry. We'll see. We'll see if that trauma continues, if that betrayal and misuse of trust continues.
It do.
Okay, well then it wasn't a waste then. So not everything's fixed.
Wait, I don't actually know that.
Oh, okay. So you might have just lied to me. Thank you. Thank you for proving my point. I'm traumatized now. You were Pearl. The last episode on this group of episodes was Onion Friend, and in case you guys don't know, I love Onion. Onion is my favorite character. Onion is the coolest character design, funniest character, creepiest character.
The little hairs.
It's so cool. Onion is the coolest freaking character in Steven Universe. Don't at me.
His scarf?
I love it. He just, like, to me, and I've said this before, he reminds me of, like, an old, like, 1950s Americana mascot for, like, a soda pop company or something like that. And
like
I love it. Yes, and I love it. Love it. This episode is, Amethyst actually has a friend, which is Onion's mom. Vidalia, who has been painting Amethyst for a long time. They have a really cool friendship, though, and I thought it was cool that, no matter how many years had passed, they were able to reconnect. And it's such an important time because while all this trauma is happening inside this house, how does Amethyst feel?
Yeah, she was kind of put to the side as well.
Yeah, and you think about being in that, in that home and having to deal with all that tension, how stressful that must have been for her. And she's probably like, how do I fix this? Or what about me? Both of those are valid feelings to have in that moment, and it's... So it's nice that she was able to go to Vidalia's house and sit down, and even though years have passed since they've seen each other, reconnect like they were best buddies. And so I thought that was really cool, and it showed a different side to Amethyst, because so far we haven't seen the deep connections from Amethyst. Everything has seemed kind of superficial,
Right.
or she's treated it as superficial. This time she treated it very seriously, and it meant something, and it was important that she had that moment. But it's called Onion Friend because while she's having that conversation, which we don't actually see a lot of, Steven is forced to be friends with Onion. And they go to his room, and it's, like, super creepy.
Don't they, like, crawl into a hole?
They they get there, and he's like, "Oh, you got a little mousy friend," and he gives it to Onion, and then Onion like hands it back to him to feed it to a snake, and he's like, "No, I don't want to."
God.
So Steven turns away. He decides he's gonna leave. Yeah, he comes back. They go through this hole in the wall, and they crawl through all this stuff. And he had the little figures that Steven collects, and Onion gave him like one of the coolest ones, and it was like, "Oh, Onion, you're so sweet. I want to hug you." Onion's my favorite character. I love Onion. And then at the end, the mouse, he had actually stuck it in his mouth and had been sitting in his mouth. So when Steven said bye, he like opened his mouth and the mouse was in there. It's funny the way they do Onion's character though is they put so much mystery around him because he doesn't talk and he's kind of like a little different looking and everyone sees him definitely as a creep because he's a mute and they don't know how to communicate with him or anything. Except for his mom understands him. His mom obviously understands his dad, the Gordon Fish Sticks guy, so...
It's like...
which apparently she was with someone beforehand, but that doesn't seem that important, because Sour Cream is obviously a half-brother to Onion.
I think so.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he's a lot taller.
Well, and I think at some point, and there was the episode, the one with the cool kids, he says, "My stepdad."
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. But yeah, Onion is cool in this episode, even though it was kind of filler, but it also kind of added a layer to Amethyst, like I said. So it wasn't a complete waste unlike Ronaldo's episode. And it had Onion in it. So I'm supporting it.
Yeah.
I'm supporting it. Overall, great batch of episodes. What a roller coaster to go through with Pearl's character and with Garnet's character and with Amethyst. It was just an up and down ride the whole time. And this to me is like, I can see why people would get into this. This makes sense to me. It's very engaging. Lots of interesting nooks and crannies they dig through with the characters, and everything's kind of connected, and everything's moving along nicely, and is funny, especially with Onion. So
yeah, you get an Onion episode.
episode. I'm sold. Give me all the Onion episodes. I'll watch all the Onion episodes back to back to back.
I'm gonna put that in a playlist and send
it
to you.
We'll live stream it. That's it. You got anything to add for Steven Universe?
You know what? I had the same exact feelings as you did when I watched those episodes. I was like, why? And then Onion. So going into Haikyuu, Jackie was not lying, everyone. She's not a liar. It's been proven right now. The episodes just keep getting better. And these 4 episodes, I know I think I said this last week, that the last 4 I watched were my favorite. Well, now... These 4 episodes, 5 through 8, are my favorite.
I promise that you're going to keep having that feeling. No, these 4 episodes. No, these 4 episodes. I'm going to
have to keep prefacing it my whole
the rest
spiel
of
by it. But, yeah, they just had a lot of emotion. Let me just get into it. Episode 5. This one was very difficult to watch because you knew it was coming after reading the description. Basically, Hinata wants to be able to hit the quick attack on his own. He doesn't want to have to rely on a set. He just wants to be a good player. Kageyama obviously looks at him and is like, but you're not a good player. You need me. That whole dynamic is like just blown out of proportion, and they get in this huge fight. They end up actually like hitting each other. And Yachi's just in the middle of it.
Stop, guys.
Yeah.
No, she gets Tanaka. That's the right guy to bring in too if you're in a fight.
Yeah, he just like punches both of them in the face. But yeah, this is the first time I think we've seen them fight since the first season, if I'm not mistaken, like the beginning of the show.
Yeah, their friendship has become less volatile up until this is kind of the breaking point.
And I think this moment is so crucial for the entire show.
Oh, absolutely.
Like this is probably one of the biggest parts in this show, I feel like.
Yep.
And they have a choice. They can either not grow from this and stay petty, or they can obviously learn from it, which is what they end up doing. At the end of this episode, Coach Yukai offers Hinata to come with him to his grandpa's house to practice. And that's all I had to say for episode 5. It was, I don't know, it was hard to watch because of the fight, and I felt like the fight needed to be its own episode. Like, that's pretty much all the episode was. So going into episode 6, it starts off with this really cool sequence of them driving to Yukai's grandpa's house. And Yukai's basically telling him, like, you need to get better. You can't stay like this. We need you for the team type of thing. They end up getting to... I call him old Coach Yukai. I was calling him Yukai's dad, but
Daddy
Jackie
Yukai.
quickly informed me that it's not Daddy Yukai. It's Granddaddy Yukai.
It's Granddaddy Yukai.
But yeah, so they get there. He learns a lot, and then before they even start practicing, there's like this sequence thrown in there of Kageyama running into Oikawa, and you're like, what the heck? And they leave you on a freaking cliffhanger.
Is that episode they just end?
Yes, they just they just so it starts off with Hinata in the car, and then they get to that house, and then all of a sudden the next scene is Kageyama, and he sees Oikawa. He's like, crap, and then he's like, Oikawa, and then Oikawa looks up surprised, and then it goes to the next scene. And you're like, okay, can't wait to see how that plays out. This episode is pretty much all of Karasuno is learning new tricks. They're all learning how to be better on their own as well as with the team. So it finally goes into Kageyama with Oikawa. You know, that whole dynamic is just so mysterious to me because I'm like, what the heck? So he asks Oikawa for advice on Hinata because, let's be honest, he needs it more than anyone. And Oikawa's like, no, dude, like, I'm leaving right now. And Kageyama's like, no, bowing to him. And then there's this really funny scene where he's taking a picture. Oikawa's nephew is taking a picture of him posing in this bow. And you're just like, no, you just feel like cringy for Kageyama because you know
that's gonna be on Twitter real fast.
Yeah, that's like, yeah. And then they like run out or they walk away, and then Kageyama runs after him, and he's like, no, you need to, like, I need your advice. Yeah. So Oikawa gives him some really good advice on how to work with Hinata, which was very needed in the perfect moment too. It's kind of weird how that all plays out like in the same day. But I feel like with their friendship, they can't stay mad at each other forever. At the end of the day, they have this team that is relying on them, and they're relying on their team. So going back to Hinata, he's still at Yukai's house, and old Coach Yukai is a unit of a coach. Like, he literally throws Yukai, and he's just like, oh my god, I don't want to be thrown. He just has that I don't care attitude when it comes to other players or like people on a team. He's like, you will learn from this. I don't care. There's like no other way out of this. You're going to learn from this, which I think is really needed for Hinata. And in my opinion, this is like the most we've seen Hinata and Kageyama learn in one episode. Like, they learned so much from this episode. And Kageyama is also learning how to set, not properly, but in a way that's better for Hinata, and what Hinata is learning right now. Like I said before, it's like the most pivotal moment I've seen as far as character development in season 2. So that was episode 6. Now going on to episode 7. Right off the bat, I knew this was going to be an awesome imagery episode because it was called Moonrise. And I was like, okay, I'm waiting for this. I'm waiting for Suki. I know he's the moon. I'm waiting for his episode. And it kind of takes a back seat. You don't realize why it's called Moonrise until later. But it starts off with Karasuno getting demolished because they don't know. They have these new set of skills, but they don't know how to work with it or use it against other teams properly. So they just kind of like freeze. Kageyama, there's a few times where he does sets and Hinata just stops. He's like, I don't know how to set that, or I don't know how to hit that. Same with Nishinoya. It was kind of weird to see, but I liked it because it shows that they've all learned a lot, and they're like actively getting better more than I've seen in the previous season.
Yeah, absolutely.
So after they get demolished by all of the practice teams, they decide to practice even harder, and Tadashi offers Suki to come train with him. And Suki's like, no. Just straight up, no, I'm going home. And Tadashi's kind of, you finally see the interactions between Tadashi and Suki that you didn't see this in season 1, you know? Like, this was a slow build-up, and I like that we're finally seeing it now. Because they're, like, the only two on the team. They haven't really gone into their backstory. I mean, minus Inoshida and the other two I don't know about.
Just say the other second years, it's fine.
The second years. But yeah, I'm like, what is with this guy? Like, it made me think, that moment, it made me think he's never really been part of the team other than when he had to be.
Suki Shima?
Yeah. He's always been there for the games and like the practice games, but he's never really, I've never seen him in like practice that much.
He's not going out of his way to become better, unlike everyone else on the team.
Yeah, literally everyone else is like striving for greatness, and he's just like, I'm good. I'm gonna stay back here. He doesn't practice because I don't think he thinks he really needs to, but the skill gap is getting, it's like catching up.
So I would disagree with you.
Why is that?
I think he doesn't practice because he doesn't see the point. Not because he's good enough, but because he knows, as we see in the next episode,
oh yeah,
that
that's
he's
right.
going to be overtaken. Or he quote unquote knows. He believes without a doubt that Hinata's better than him and will be better than him, and there's nothing he can do about it. So why should he put the effort into something if it just means he's going to fail? If he's not going to be number one, why try?
Yeah.
Why try harder?
Even though he turned down Tadashi's offer, Kuro and Bokuto are in the next gym, and they're like, hey, come in here, we need to practice with you. That sounds creepy.
Yeah. But, where's that fanfic at?
So he decides to go with them for whatever reason.
Oh my god.
So they're like trying to teach him stuff, but he's not really learning. He doesn't want to learn, you know what I mean?
Yeah. He's very disengaged with volleyball.
And Kuro and Bokuto are like, I'm the best on my team type of people.
Yeah.
But Kuro easily blocks different shots. And this is like the first time I've seen Suki Shima take offense to his playstyle a little bit, or like what he can do, his power level, if you will. And the Kuro straight up tells him, you're weak. And he's like, oh my god, I can't handle this. I'm going to explode. And then you realize Suki feels inferior to Hinata, which I had so many questions, but then I was like, wait, that makes sense. Because they're pretty much the same team. I mean, the same...
They are the same position.
They're pretty much the same position.
They're not pretty much. You want to say that again? They are the same position?
They are the same position, but Hinata is actively, trying. Suki doesn't try. So obviously Hinata is a little bit, or going to get better, It's interesting to see the dynamic because we've seen it before in this show, but not really in any other shows. This whole people silently suffering because they're jealous of the next person, or this other person is better than them.
Yeah.
Which we don't see in very many shows. And this show has already delved into it deeply with two different characters.
And I think it's real. Like, I think any human being has
very realistic.
Felt that before. Some sort of sense of jealousy or envy towards somebody that is better, that they perceive as better than them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was not prepared for that episode. And going into episode 8, I was... not prepared as well. Really kind of a sad episode. You realize why Suki is the way he is. Right off the bat, we're introduced to his brother via flashback. Mm-hmm. And we realize his brother is like is Suki's biggest fan. Or his biggest fan.
I mean, that's not wrong, but we haven't got that far in the show yet.
I'm just like... his biggest role model, and he even inspired him and Tadashi to play volleyball, even on Karasuno, which I thought was really cool. So his brother's telling him all these things, all these amazing things he can do, that he's such a good player, and don't get me wrong, like, he's a good player. He was showing Suki how to do different things, but then there's this moment where, in the flashback, where this kid is like, oh, your brother's on Karasuno? Like, I've never seen him, And Suki's like, that's not true. But Suki's never been to a game. So Suki, this random kid that's talking crap to him, and Tadashi go to a game to see Suki's brother play. And they find out that his brother he can't even play in the games. Like, he's not a bad player, but at that moment for Karasuno, they just had too good of players that he couldn't even be on the team.
Yeah, to put it in perspective, if Suki Shima was on that team, Suki Shima K, if he was on that team, he wouldn't be a starter either. And his brother would probably be a starter on the team that he's on.
Yeah.
You know, that's how much of a difference there was in power level between the two teams at the time. But the most important part is the person who took his spot at Ace.
Which was the Tiny Giant.
Exactly.
Which is a direct parallel for Kei, Tsukishima, and Hinata. Mm-hmm. And we see more imagery. It's more of this sun and moon imagery. Mm-hmm. And it's a dynamic an imagery that's been shown so much, even through season 1, of the sun and moon. Like, there's something between Hinata and Tsukishima, and Hinata doesn't even know. Like, he just thinks Tsukishima does not care about volleyball.
But it's interesting because Hinata does still see Tsukishima as competition.
Yeah.
Because of his height. He's like, yeah, he's tall and can block like pow and, you know, all that stuff.
So when Tadashi tells Hinata about all of this and why Suki's the way he is and why he envies him, Hinata's like, but he's tall. Like, that's, like, he can be better than me, but he just doesn't try. And it's because he doesn't want to fail. Yeah. Like, his brother, quote unquote, failed.
Yeah.
Best quote from this episode, probably season 2. I didn't get the full quote, but it was like, it hit me. Like, I had to step back for a second and I got goosebumps. So it was Tadashi talking to, finally coming out of his shell and just talking to Tsukishima. And he was like, why do you always set limits for yourself? It's so true. Like, why do you always set limits for yourself?
And then Tsukishima asks, why do you try so hard for a club when you know you're just going to fail? And Tadashi says, pride. It's our sense of pride. What more do you need?
Which was, like, very telling. Yeah. Like, you have to have pride to be on CROWS, you know?
You have to have pride to play any type of competitive sport, for sure. It just is, how destructive is it to you is the most important thing.
Regardless of, like, it being realistic for them in the future, like, if they can get on a college team, like, they still have that pride and they're still working with their team and trying to get better.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is, I've said it before, the main theme that I love about this show is, like, keep trying.
Well, see, and I think my favorite theme in the show was the opposite of that. And Tsukishima's brother was another example of it. It doesn't matter how hard you try. That's not going to guarantee success. Yeah. The ability to continue to go on is in itself its own talent, but you can't succeed on hard work alone. Yeah. And Tsukishima's brother's a great example. He worked very hard. There was no doubt. Like, they showed him coming home after a long day of practice, and he needed his mom to make him 3 lunches because he had morning practice and afternoon practice, and he still had lunch. And he says he's practicing really, really hard because he wants to crack that starting lineup. But it didn't matter how hard he tried. And I think Tsukishima sees that, and he has taken the very, very negative approach to that idea and decided, well, then I just won't try if it doesn't matter. Well, you don't succeed at anything if you don't try. Like, you have to have the right combination of things in order to get to where you want to go.
Which is so sad for his character. That's why it's so sad to watch, because it's like, he's brainy, he knows what he's talking about, but, like, he doesn't try. Yeah. And if he were to just try, like, he'd be amazing.
Yeah, he'd be great.
And Coach Yukai even says they need him to try. Mm-hmm. Right now, more than ever, they need him to try. Yeah. And it made me think about, what's his name? I think it's Kunami on Aoba Josai. And I'm like, he's kind of the same way, but the difference is he's not good.
Well, in Aoba Josai has the depth to where they don't need Kunami to be giving 100% all the time.
That's right.
Yeah. Karasuno doesn't have that depth, and if you're one of the 12 for Karasuno at this point in time, you better be willing to give 100% throughout an entire game period. Like, you can't let up, because if you let up, that's when you're going to fail.
Period.
Anyways,
that has been so far into season 2.
You feel different about Tsukishima now, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember thinking, because, like I said when we were talking about him in the beginning, it's weird to like Tsukishima at first, but you will grow to like this guy. And I think Tsukishima has some of the best character development in these 3 seasons. Trust me, when you get to the end of season 3, your opinion on him is going to be completely different again. So I'm looking forward to you getting to that point for sure. Cool beans. Well, then we will catch you guys next week for another episode of Beach City Crows. My name is Jackie, and I have been watching Steven Universe.
And I am Isaac, and I have been watching Haikyuu.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey guys, it's Jackie.
And Isaac.
From Nonessential Media.
We just want to thank you guys so much for listening, and if you'd like, feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel or our Patreon.
And we want to hear from you guys. Let us know what you think. Let us know if you're watching along with us and what your thoughts are.
You can find us on Twitter at Nonessentialm.
We're on Facebook as Nonessential Media.
We're also on Instagram at Nonessential Media.
Check out our website, nonessentialmedia.com.
So check us out.
Thanks again for listening. We truly appreciate every single one of you.
See you guys next Saturday for a new episode of Beach City Crows. Bye. Bibbly babbly bab.